Austin Chamberlain, in a speech made in 1936, said, "It is not so long ago that a member of the diplomatic body in London, who had spent some years of his service in China, told me that there was a Chinese curse which took the form of saying, 'May you live in interesting times.' There is no doubt that the curse has fallen on us." I think we'd be justified in saying that we're currently living in similarly interesting times. That which we thought we knew has changed. We've seen over these last weeks something that was distant and remote and from which we felt secure and protected visit us with ferocious speed and impact. Suddenly we feel exposed and vulnerable. Where we thought we had a measure of control over our lives, we've realized that in many ways that control was illusory. As someone in our community group said, "This doesn't seem real. This is something that happens elsewhere in the world or in films." Such events more often happen on a local scale, but for those involved, they're no less impactful. A natural disaster or a terrorist attack, the sudden loss of a job, breakup of a relationship, a life-threatening illness, the loss of a loved one. The difference here is that the pandemic is global, reaching into every part of every person's life. Of course, it's still the poorest and most vulnerable who are most affected. Not everyone finds it easy to self-isolate and keep social distance. Where is God in all this? What does Holy Week have to say about such times? Perhaps the most interesting time, to use that phrase, since the Second World War. Today, as we journey through Holy Week, we focus on this passage in John chapter 16, where Jesus continues to speak to his disciples about his coming death. His friends were coming to terms with what he was telling them. Their world, like ours, was being turned upside down. Jesus had been central and essential to their lives. He was their whole world, and now he was telling them that he was to leave them. But Jesus wanted to help his disciples not only understand what would happen to him, but also to glimpse joy beyond grief, to look past the present time to what lay beyond. In this reflection, I want to help us to look through the present moment with Jesus, to focus on three things about the way Jesus taught his disciples to deal with their coming darkness and how he led them to a place of light beyond. My prayer is that they might help us too to look beyond our own current dark moments, whatever they might be. The first thing I notice is that Jesus was patient. Jesus' friends were confused. They were unable to understand, stunned by the enormity of what was happening to them. They were full of questions. "What do you mean, Jesus? Where are you going? How can this be?" It's a feeling with which, over the last weeks, you might well be able to identify. People who are bereaved often say they feel numb, unable to take in the enormity of it all, not able to cope with all that's happening. When our world shifts, we grieve for the world that used to be, however it might have changed and through whatever circumstance. Jesus understood. He acknowledged the difficulty. "I have more to say to you, more than you can now bear," he told them. So he knew that there was more that was needed, but that they couldn't cope right now, that they needed time and space, and he gave it to them. In fact, he promised them help not just for that time, but for the future. Jesus promised that through his Holy Spirit, he would be with them to teach and to guide them beyond that terrible time. They could move at the pace which worked for them, and he would be there all the way. It's no different for us. That same Jesus is available to us too. The comfort that God offers is not just there for the moment. God isn't just an emergency service for the crisis only. He is constant. However long our darkness takes, he is there by our side until our vision lightens. He knows that grieving takes time, that coming to terms with a loss, whatever form that loss might take, is a journey and not a moment. The second thing I notice is that Jesus could understand what the disciples were feeling. Yes, they were confused, but they were also hurting, even angry. "In a little while you will see me no more," he told them. "You will weep and mourn while the world rejoices." Jesus knew pain. He understood it. The people who are most able to help others are usually those who have been through the same thing themselves. It's no accident that often bereavement counsellors have themselves been bereaved. Recovering addicts are sponsored by those who are themselves recovering addicts. And if that's the case, then there's no better accompanier than Jesus. Because whatever we go through, Jesus understands it completely. Every human pain has been his. He knows what it is to suffer. But Jesus went beyond understanding. He offered hope. You will grieve, he told his friends, but your grief will turn to joy. What a promise. Jesus takes us beyond the painful moment and into a place with him which is full of joy, light out of darkness. In our current situation, which is so unprecedented in our own lifetimes, it can seem impossible to grasp that this will all be over, that there is a light beyond. We wonder if our world will ever get back to normal and what that normal might look like. Whatever pain we live with, it can sometimes feel permanent and unmoving. But Jesus assures us that the light is present, it is coming. It's no accident that we use candles to remind us of the Christ, the light of the world. Finally, Jesus offers to his friends something more, not just recovery from a particular dark time and a drawing alongside while that happens, although certainly he offers those things, but he also promises a complete and enduring joy. Let me remind you again of a small part of the passage we're focusing on. Now is your time of grief, but I will see you again and you will rejoice, and no one will take away your joy. In that day you will no longer ask me anything. I tell you the truth, my Father will give you whatever you ask in my name. Until now you have not asked for anything in my name. Ask and you will receive, and your joy will be complete. Jesus offers us hope, joy, life, and love beyond anything which we receive anywhere else. He offers us a peace which can only be found in him. What Jesus holds out to us through his death and resurrection is a relationship with a loving God who will supply our every need, for now as well as eternity. That doesn't mean an easy life. It does mean one in which we will never be abandoned or be hopeless. And all we need to do is ask. He can and will lead us through the Holy Weeks and Good Fridays of our lives toward the joy of Easter. That's what this reading glimpses. That's what Jesus' words promise for us. That is the joy in the grief of the cross. We do live in interesting times. We feel out of control and our world looks very different, with old and firm securities so seemingly lightly swept away. And there is the danger that this current situation can overshadow the older pains and the individual hurts that still exist and that we still carry. As a friend of mine said to me recently, other diseases are available. But whether the darkness we carry is the topical one of the moment, or whether it's been buried in the avalanche of coronavirus, God has not forgotten you. He understands that these things cannot be understood and accepted in a moment, and he's willing to wait with you. God understands the pain that such burdens cause because he's been there before you, and he's willing to be your counselor, your support, and your guide. God offers, though, more than grin and bear it in a perpetual place of pain. God offers Easter after Good Friday, a breaking of the dawn, a light beyond the darkness. Our Easter may look very different this year. Its celebration won't be the one we're used to. We can't physically join together to greet one another with hugs and handshakes and smiles. We can't belt out the Easter hymns and songs together as we normally do. But God is the same yesterday, today, and forever, and he hasn't changed, and neither has the message of Easter. Light out of darkness, joy out of grief, are still as firm a promise as ever. Joy is coming. If anything, this Easter might remind us of that more forcefully and tangibly than ever. There is hope. This will not stand. We must hold the pain and darkness of Good Friday together. It's good to do that, to recognize pain and loss. But we do so knowing that Easter is coming. Joy comes in the morning. Jesus and the cross are the most powerful statement of hope and promise that could ever be. We simply need to hold on for its promised light and joy.